It's a trope that's more than 30 years old, but when it's done well, still feels cool as hell to watch. The trope of the nightclub fight sequence. These scenes are almost always done amidst a throng of clueless dancers, banging techno and industrial music in the background, and almost always ending up in battles that are far more chaotic than your typical beat 'em up sequences. Now, there are two movies that I think kicked off this trend. The first one, which I do love this movie and I'm kind of mentioning as a honorable mention, being 1994's The Crow, with its infamous nightclub shootout, where the Crow invades a gangster meeting in the middle of an industrial underground club to hunt down the last of the men who assaulted and killed his girlfriend. And then there's a second, and I think anyway, more famous one, being the opening of Blade in 1998. That starts out with a couple going to an underground rave that then turns out to be a literal bloodbath. If you watch the movie, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The minutes-long sequence is done probably a good 3 or 4 minutes at least to the song Confusion, with the distant sound of underground techno beating in the air in the background as the tension of the couple builds as we find out that one of them is a vampire. And it grows louder and louder and louder and louder until the bloodbath literally starts and the young man himself, who is human, suddenly realizes that he's on the menu. His screams are drowned out over the confusion until Blade arrives and does what he does best. What's more, Blade continued this trend in Blade 2, with what I think is Wesley Snipes being meta when he has to enter yet another nightclub, because vampires love their raves, and he mutters to himself,
"You gotta be kidding me."
Since then, the nightclub fight has become a steady trope for martial arts action stars to publicly display their martial arts abilities to the public, as it were, all the while trying to look cool as fuck. Its predecessor, the bar fight trope, served the same purpose for decades, but this felt like more of a modernized glow-up. But, like all these tropes, it's gotten old and predictable, as expected with anything Hollywood does when it thinks they found the new money train. Everyone jumps on it and tries to copy it, and suddenly the nuance of it is basically lost. However, the nightclub fight scene got a glow up itself with the changing of how fight sequences were filmed after 2009. Rather than just being glorified demonstrations, they became much more brutal and smash mouth. Yes, there are martial arts sequences here and there, but it's all hidden beneath the chaos, yelling, screaming, music playing, and violence of the scene. When done right, this is what makes nightclub fights work. The combination of build-up, good techno and or industrial music playing in the background, with tight crowds and a balance of fluidity, brutality, and camera work from the actors and stunties. In fact, it was while I was watching the Netflix movie Havoc that inspired me to do this video, because its execution was just so jaw-dropping that I would literally watch it 2 or 3 more times just to get to that particular fight. Nightclub battles can all have their own distinct fingerprint. The John Wick franchise's battles are brutal, up close, with a level of unbelievability matched with a personal and intense violence that somehow produces little blood despite its level of violence. While the Blade nightclub fight sequences were a wide-shot display, showing flashy clean moves or guns blazing and vampires getting shredded or shot to pieces. And then with Havoc, it was nearly all of the above, but with much more grit, blood, and the characters feeling a clear sense of loss of control. And when all these are executed well, you can get one hell of a mesmerizing sequence that has its audience glued to their seats and unable to move, in a fluctuating state of entranced music and shock and awe over what the hell they're watching. That being said, when it's executed badly, well, perhaps the right way to say it would be, when it's executed in a way prior to 1994, it's just boring. The characters feel like they're trying too hard to look cool and badass, and the choreography poorly hides the little moments where the stunties are holding back or when attack is focused a little too long on a punch or a kick or whatnot. Creating the perfect nightclub battle is definitely an art form in and of itself, and one that few can master, much less those who can do so without having to copy someone else's. But when it works, it works.